the first major point in the awakening is the idea of preventable disease. Many of us, our knee-jerk reactions when we hear about disease or when we hear about something happening to someone is to think about the fact that, oh, that wasn't preventable. That child being sick and having that disease, that was genetic, that wasn't preventable. That kid we see on the St. Jude commercial, that's suffering in a hospital, that wasn't preventable. Let's talk about preventable for just a second. So first of all, the definition. To keep from happening. To keep someone or something from doing something. To anticipate or counter in advance. Could everyone can agree? Does that pretty much mean never happen, not going to happen? Preventable? It means that it's something that we can influence to make sure it doesn't happen. That's the technical definition of preventable. A key point here, and we'll get into the statistics, is to realize that the vast majority of disease that we are experiencing in the United States of America that is bankrupting this country right now is preventable. The field of cellular biology claims that when you take the true definition of prevention and apply it to science, less than 2% of all disease is actually genetic. And to help you understand this, we're also going to go through the definition of genetic and help you understand genetics a little bit here as we go. I know this is shocking to a lot of people. So that means 98% of all the disease that we are seeing and experiencing right now in this country is preventable. Obviously, it'd be through lifestyle and health design. How you live your life, how you think, how you act on a day-to-day basis can impact and prevent 98% of the health problems that you and I see and experience on a day-to-day basis. Can anyone imagine what would happen if we even cut out 50% of the disease that we see today? There'd be more mothers around. There'd be more fathers, more kids. It would absolutely change the face of history if we prevented even a fraction of what we could. Even if you want to say, Jake, that number is ridiculous, I can't believe that. Okay, how about 50? Financial crisis, gone. Half the hospitals in the country, gone. Doctors' offices, half as full. Uh-oh, we have a problem. Small conflict of interest when preventable disease starts being talked about in the system that we have as healthcare today, doesn't it? So it's long been assumed that our genetics run our life and determine our level of health. Okay? So the definition of genetic, this is from Princeton, is a disease or disorder that was inherited genetically or a disease caused by genetic mutation. Genetic mutation means as a gene is being copied, an X or an O is missed, to put it simply. Just a random miss in the copying process. That is a genetic mutation. Okay? It's commonly misunderstood with diseases that are caused by gene damage done by the environment, gene expression, which is also influenced by the environment, and we'll talk about some science about that in just a little bit, and susceptible genes, or a person who has a gene that is susceptible to a disease. Perhaps it's a weakened gene. None of those things are genetic. A true genetic disorder is a genetic mutation. Okay? And this is important. I know it's a little technical, but it's important to, again, to this awakening process. So it's recently become understood that our genes are actually not in control of our health and our lifestyles. in the vast majority of cases. Okay? I ran into a situation running a clinic 3 years ago where I watched a family go through a baby who couldn't produce copper, couldn't assimilate copper in its body. And this baby died at a year and a half. That is a genetic mutation. That is rare. You don't hear of things like that. Okay? A baby having, or someone having type 1 diabetes, that is not genetic. By its very definition, what we're talking about here, type 1 diabetes is preventable and it is not genetic. Okay? Behaviors have a much more important impact on the quality of life and level of health that we experience. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about gene expression, because this is important. Okay? First study. In the Journal of Childhood Development last year, there was a research study that basically proved that kids' genes were affected by parents' behaviors and beliefs. They went through an entire process, observed thousands of children, did all the controls and everything, and found out that they were seeing changes in the genes of children based on if they had parents that had certain belief sets or not. If they were growing up in a positive and supportive environment, or if they were scared for their lives. Okay? So there's science to prove that genes are being affected by the environment right there. Journal of Clinical Epigenetics last year shows that nutrients switch on genes that suppress tumor growth. So when we see people who get cancer, who have tumors, who have to end up having surgery or chemotherapy or something, which I shouldn't say have to, they end up electing to and they're pushed to do so. Is anyone talking about the nutrients that could possibly switch off the growth of that tumor? Anybody? You know, I was in a consult. I was in a checkup with my mother-in-law, who was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer, still preventable, but nonetheless, we were there. She elected to have the operation, and she had chosen not to go through radiation and chemotherapy. Okay? This was before she changed her lifestyle around. This was her aha, or her awakening process. And I sat in 4 follow-up appointments with clinical oncologists, her surgeons, radiologists, and every single one of them said that what you do in life after this point is not going to matter. The only thing that's going to matter is if you take this chemo or if you take this radiation. And when you got down to the very bottom of the conversation, the one thing they could never provide is proof. They could never prove that my mother-in-law was going to have any better chance of surviving by not taking the treatment or by taking it. Couldn't prove it with statistics, which fortunately enough, I was in the room and I knew what questions to ask. It doesn't make me smarter than anyone else. It just means I've been around it. So gene expression, which, by the way, my mother-in-law is healthier now than she's ever been before. They call her the model patient, even though they did nothing they told her to. So there's a success story for you. So gene expression, how does gene expression matter? Why does it matter in this whole conversation? We already see that gene expression is affected, especially in children, by how we behave as adults. Did anyone write down their children as one of the most important things in their life? Vast majority of you, I think. You're changing their genes with how you behave and how you make decisions. You're influencing their very DNA. Their ability to thrive as an adult is going to be based on your decisions today. I know that's a very sobering thought, but it's the truth. The nice thing is you're here. You're hearing this, which means as soon as you can begin to possibly change that influence and increase its effectiveness, you'll get better results. Here's another study, and you'll have to excuse the scientific jargon. They say fetuses. I would say baby. Fetuses sense mom's mental state. This came out of Cal Irvine. It's basically a research study that goes over a process of examining a baby's development and watching in different mothers, and again, how the mothers were living, how they were eating, how they were thinking, and watching how it would change DNA in babies. When a baby is born with a health problem, it's not necessarily genetic. It can be expressed through the genes, but the genes were affected by the lifestyle, thoughts, and behaviors of the mother. Okay? That's the difference between a genetic gene and a gene that was caused by preventable action expressed through a gene. There's two very, very different things. Okay? Gene expression. So it refers to how, when, why any specific gene would go through the process of being copied. This is also called methylation. Okay? Methylation groups go in and read DNA and copy DNA. All right? So regulatory proteins, this is a big turn of events. This was discovered probably about 20 years ago, and it was completely suppressed. But regulatory proteins in the body control this process. It's not the genes themselves. Genes themselves are just like blueprints. Okay? So if genes ran the show, it would be as ridiculous as me saying, I could take plans of a building. You all seen plans rolled up of a building? I could take plans of a building, go buy a plot of land, take those plans and throw them anywhere on that plot and expect that when I come back the next day, the building's going to be up. That's how ridiculous this belief that genes run our health is. Genes are blueprints. They are directions. They are like paper. Regulatory proteins come in and read, and this methylation process happens. Does anyone know what influences regulatory proteins? Their environment. Frequencies, thoughts, nutrients, chemicals, all influence regulatory proteins, not some random mistake. Okay? So you have control of this process. I want you to see this picture. And this is a picture of two genetically and age identical mice. These mice are genetically completely the same. You want to know what changed here? The mother was fed differently on the left. And that mother's diet caused certain genes and the expression of certain genes to stop. So that the child came out, even though it was genetically identical and they're the same age, they took the same egg, split it in two, put it in two different mothers, treated the mothers differently, and this is what happens. Don't tell me our disease epidemic right now is genetic. That is the same genes. The only thing that differed here in this example between these two mice was the diet of the mother and the environment that the mother grew up in. And I just want to read a little bit from this. So these identical twins are not exactly alike, thanks in part to differences in diet and other lifestyle factors that turn on or off genetic switches called methyl groups. Okay, so this is genetic expression. Methyl groups are like chemical clusters, each made of one carbon and 3 hydrogen atoms. They latch onto DNA near a gene. Methyl groups act like switches, turning on a gene or off. In the case of the fat orange mouse, the scientist and his colleagues at Duke used methyl groups to turn off something called the agouti gene. Okay? So basically, you're seeing a dramatic difference in the outcome of the life of a human being, or the life of a living being. This is a mammal. They're used a lot because they're very much like we are genetically. And you're seeing a huge difference from just simple lifestyle. So not all genes are expressed. This is very important, because even if there is a gene that's susceptible to a disease, it doesn't mean it has to be copied. If you have a gene in your body that is susceptible to heart disease, or is going to cause you to be susceptible, it's going to create proteins that are going to get in the way of other things in your heart, and it's going to cause problems. Those genes do not have to be expressed in your life. That is one of the things that is very, very important to understand when we talk about genetics and genetic expression. Because some of those genes, or all of them, can lay dormant if your lifestyle, your thoughts, and your behaviors cause it to. Okay? Even if you have the genes that are predisposed to produce disease in your body, they do not necessarily have to be expressed or copied, which result in disease and disorder. So what this means then, if this is true, the top killers in the U.S. are preventable. So here's a list of the top killers in the United States of America right now. See any familiar names on this list? Ladies and gentlemen, this list takes millions of lives. Fathers, mothers, uncles, aunts, children. These are all preventable diseases. And we're accepting this. We're the most developed and advanced country on the face of the planet, and we're accepting this. So let's look at the heart disease for just a second. So this article was written, it's called, For Heart Health, Eating Well May Trump Genes. It basically just goes into a process of discussing a gene variant that has been found in research that has been, people who have this variant are susceptible to heart disease. And what they found out is as they ate better, this gene variant lied dormant, and people never experienced a problem. Has anyone ever heard that heart disease is genetic? Has anyone ever heard someone telling a story about heart disease and how my grandfather had it, my father had it, and my uncles have it, and this and that, my brother has it, and oh, you can pretty much hear it in their voice. They pretty much have it. Not true. Not true. A disease that is truly genetic will show up when you are born as a mutation. A disease that comes and gives you a heart attack at the age of 50 is not, by definition, is not genetic. You have every ounce of control over that disease. And our number one killer in this country, we have every ounce of control over that disease. Another one that I talk about quite a bit in this class is brain function. You see Alzheimer's here as a major player in these sets of disease. Scientists chart gene expression in the brain across lifespan. So this was published in the Journal of Nature and was a study done by Johns Hopkins. The switching on or expression of specific genes in the human genome is what makes each human tissue and each human being unique. A new study by researchers at Johns Hopkins and the Lieber Institute for Brain Development and the National Institute of Mental Health found that many gene expression changes that occur during fetal development are reversed immediately after birth. So most of the changes that are happening as a baby develops, as soon as it comes into the environment and begins to take in sensory perception on its own, it begins to change immediately. As soon as that child is experiencing the world for itself, you see genes changing. Does that sound like someone stuck with certain genes to you? Doesn't sound like that to me either. So, just a little bit of research to help you see why this lie of genetic disease taking all these lives is dangerous to us as consumers and those of us who want to take care of ourselves and our family. Because if we actually fall for this, we don't believe we have any control. I think it's becoming quite clear that we have almost all the control in the world. So the good news is if you already have those current health problems, a big part of preventable disease is that it's almost always reversible. Yes, that means if someone has heart disease now, they can reverse it. There's plenty of research to prove this. If someone has cancer, they can reverse it. Does that make sense? Pretty foundation-shaking stuff, isn't it? Kind of changes the way we all look at health. So, this means hope for a great quality of life for everyone. One thing that I want to touch on real quick, you see the little light bulb there. And I want you to understand what I meant when I wrote this, okay? Because some people take issue when they read this. The vast majority of doctors do not believe their patients will make the necessary lifestyle changes to improve their health and stick with it. Or they do not believe it's possible for lifestyle changes to resolve disease. Can anyone think of a physician that may be taking care of them right now, one of their physicians, that falls in the first category here? They simply really don't believe in their patient. Anyone ever had a situation where they looked their doc in the eye and said, I'm going to do this naturally, and they said, good luck? You have no idea how many times I've heard that story and talked to the very doctor that believed that about their patients. And I said, Doc, what do you think causes your patients to be like this? Oh, it surely wasn't him. Couldn't have been their doctor who had no belief in his patient. Or they simply don't believe that lifestyle changes or nutrition or anything like that has any impact on whether you can heal or not. Anyone have one of those doctors? Didn't I just read several scientific articles showing that the mere attitude of the mother can change the genes in a child? Isn't that environment? That nutrients can stop tumor growth and reverse it? That nutrients can take someone who's susceptible with heart disease and cause them to have a healthy life throughout? Our doctors are out of date, ladies and gentlemen, and we need to be paying attention to this. And we need to know, basically, what is going on. It's your life, not theirs, right? Well, that's why you're here.